Yeah, cool. So, well, I'm Erik. I am an activist with the Bob Brown Foundation, and I have been for many years now. And I suppose my role is to try and make sure I know what's going on everywhere in Tasmania, and to ruffle feathers and to get people engaged in non-violent direct action is one of the things I do for the forests and the oceans and for whatever it is that they're trying to do to decimate this place and others around the world. So it's a really important time to get involved in NVDA, so non-violent direct action at the moment, because there's a lot going on and there's a lot of groups out there that are going to be more and more so using some non-violent direct action tactics. So here in Lutruwita, Tasmania, we have been engaging in non-violent direct action for many years, decades even. So right back in the Franklin campaign was the beginning of the Greens in Australia, and so that was a massive win of a predominantly non-violent direct action campaign, which means people get together and stand up for what they believe in without using violence and actually acting on something that they truly believe should be changed. So it's basically a change. Non-violent direct action can be for starting something or for stopping something. And more often than not, we're stopping something to bring to the limelight some wrongs that are being done, and to actually put our bodies on the line to say that, no, that's not okay and not on our watch. So there's some slides here that we're going to be going through, but I'll just talk a little bit to them, but not directly. So maybe Hillary, if you carry on. And yeah, so yeah, stop on that one. Maybe I've just got another one here on my laptop, so I'll just have a look. I won't run through all of them, and it would be really good if people do come down to Tassie, that you join a NVDA training, because it's something that will benefit you no matter how many times you go to one, and lots of different groups might make them happen. At the Bob Brown Foundation, we have them regularly throughout the year, and more so in the summer, of course, because that's when most people are down and when there's more activity going on. So we'll skip that one. I mean, yeah. I suppose we'll go to the slide, what is non-violent direct action? I've defined it a bit. Non-violence is, acting for something you believe in. What it isn't really is probably just as important. So a lot of people write letters to politicians, and they go to rallies and they go to marches and they write petitions and they vote or abstain from voting. But a lot of those things are not direct. So you're asking someone to do something. You're not putting your body in front of what you believe is wrong. And so direct action nips it in the bud and goes straight to the body that's going to be actually making the harm happen. So a direct action can take many forms, but it isn't just standing in front of a bulldozer or climbing a tree to defend a forest. It can be a demonstration, going straight to the politician and telling them directly that you do not want this to happen. It can be a strike, so stopping from working, and then therefore you're sending a massive message there. Getting footage, so a lot of direct action can be about bearing witness, where there's a lot of secrecy in a lot of these things, and exposing that kind of stuff is really important. So getting footage of, forests falling or animals getting slaughtered, and exposing that. So it has to be a bit of a conversation started. There has to be something will happen for that. Walk-on. So if you can gather a whole lot of people wherever you are in the world and something's going wrong something's going on that you don't agree with, going and walking onto that site and staying there until you're told by the police to move, that stalls them. It stops them from continuing work. It sends a message to the powers that be that there's a resistance forming and building, and it can be a really good way of initiating people to take that power into their own hands. So it doesn't have to be immediately hardcore, oh my God, what are we doing here? It's like you see something happening, you ask your politician, please, can you stop this from happening? Probably you won't even hear back. You write a petition, 50,000 people write a petition and still nothing changes. You go to a strike or a rally, still nothing changes. And then what do? Like, you're meant to sit back and vote for someone else that doesn't work either. So then you take that next step and you're like, well, I'm going to take it into my own hands, and we're going to have a group of people that are going to go and do something, a non-violent direct action. So a peaceful action that doesn't harm people, it doesn't harm property, but it actually puts your body in front of something that you believe in, that should not, so that you put your body in front of something that directly stops what is happening that you believe shouldn't be happening. So that's a very vague, brief description. The next slide has got principles of non-violence. Yeah, so compared to letter writing and petitions and things like that, the situations are often higher stress and higher risk, but violence is not what is going to win, and that's been proven throughout history. So the act of violence isn't something that's going to engage more people. It's not going to convince more people that what you believe is right should be happening, and it's not the right way to do it. You're not going to ever, I don't believe you're ever going to win anything through violence. So non-violence doesn't mean to be passive, but it actually is very much more empowering. If you remain non-violent, they can't deal with that. So the forces that be are built to be able to retaliate to violence. And as soon as you use non-violence, there isn't a mechanism that they know how to deal with. They can put you away, they can like take you away, but you'll always have the upper hand with a non-violent tactic. And we're fighting against violence, whether that's not violence to animals or to nature, to wildlife, or even to our futures. So it's really important to have those principles in your mind of, okay, it may be stressful, but if you keep calm, and you're always going to have the upper hand if you are non-violent. Maybe next slide. Why direct action? We've kind of been talked a bit about that. So yeah, why direct action? There's not a lot of accountability at all in the world in which we live. So people can easily, through greed and oppression, destroy places that are wild, or harm animals for greed, for money, to make a profit. There's no accountability. And so bringing that accountability back to the people, that they need to understand that we can't have this anymore in this world. A big one at the moment, obviously, is climate change. So it's very difficult to understand the entire concept of climate change, but there are many groups working on individual parts of that huge process that we call climate change, whether it's the clearing of forests or the bleaching of the oceans, coal, biomass, all these things that contribute to a world in which we're living now with leaders who are not dealing with the situation. And so that will affect our children, and those decisions will affect our children's children, and we have to act now. And so we're done signing petitions because they don't work. You need to be then empowered to take that next step and actually stop what's going on for the ecology of the planet to remain as it is and how we know it and how we knew it, and to get it back on track. And there's lots of examples throughout history of how NVDA has worked. Most recently in Western Australia is a great example with the protection of native forests and the cessation of native forest logging in WA, because they realised that it's actually more economically viable, ironically, to keep forests standing. And so we want to see more of that, please. Thank you. So we go, let's just carry on to actions and purpose and planning. So some of the stuff that we do through nonviolent direct action, so stopping work operations. So that might be people standing in front of a road where there's machines trying to get in, or blocking a gate. For example, the MMG campaign we had in takayna recently for the last, for 71 days, where MMG, the mining company, are trying to put a tailings dam into the takayna. And so that's in pure rainforest. The ground zero is just an enormous patch of beautiful, pristine rainforest. And so every day for 70 days, we unrolled a very powerful and very effective direct action campaign that involved people every day, sometimes twice a day, groups of people just going onto this road and in defiance, maybe sitting down cross-legged and just refusing to move while these enormous trucks would just have to stop and wait for the police to come. Sometimes there'll be people attached to lock-ons. So either a barrel filled with concrete, for example, that's very hard to move, and people with their arms in these barrels kind of stapled to the road so that the trucks couldn't pass, or people running out from the bush in teams, in affinity groups with their own roles, and attaching to machines or attaching to the gate, locking the gate, attaching to the gate with steel tubes, for example. These are all forms of direct action, how to actually stop what you're seeing is the most imminent pointy end of the destruction. So if those machines had rolled in, they would have been smashing rainforests. So you have to, that's the last stand, stopping those trucks from rolling in, for example. Occupations as well, if you occupy a forest. So I know we had the knoll where we had an occupation. So we had a tree sit probably 40 meters up a big eucalypt in the middle of ground zero. And so they wouldn't have been able to come and clear that forest because there were people there putting their bodies on the line by even just being there, just the in resistance. And so that also involves a lot of roles, peripheral roles that aren't just the person in the sit. So that's the other important part of direct action. It takes an affinity group. It's not a single one person action. It takes a whole backup of media team and support crew and runners and people who are just going to go there and hang out as support buddies and media liaisons. legal observers and liaisons to try and reduce any risk of violence in those situations, because there can be some pretty irate people who, you know, if you really want to go to work and your work happens to be something that is just not right. It may be legal, but it doesn't necessarily mean that is right in this world. And so to send that message, you're going to be coming up against people who aren't necessarily on side, and they can be violent, either aggressive or physically violent or verbally violent. And that can go for contractors or officials, or even the police. They might just, you know, snap and have had enough. And so, yeah, we have people that are trained in that kind of thing to kind of deflect that kind of scenario. So de-escalation of violence tactics, and we have people that have done a lot of that. So just to like deflect those situations. But yeah, so there are many roles. What else? Oh yeah, Hillary's like, yeah, next slide. What else? Tools, actually tools, tactics. Oh yeah, so we went through some of the tools and tactics. Yeah, so a lot of what we do in Tasmania, for example, we've got some incredible trees because our forests are incredible, and a lot of the stuff we do is in the forest. And so occupations in trees are not only powerful for like visually, it's very emotive to be up an incredible huge eucalypt that you can say they're literally going to drop this tree for firewood or to put a tailings dam in, or, you know, but it's also very difficult for them to get you out of. So if you're 60 meters up a tree and that tree sit is directly connected to a machine or a monopole in the middle of the road or a tripod, or someone in a car that's cemented into the road, so a dragon, like the one you see now, the Sumac Cadillac. So that car's cemented into the road through a pipe, and someone lies inside the car with the hand through the car into a concrete ball underneath the road. And so when they're clipped in with a little chain and a bracelet, they can't, the road is essentially blocked. You can't move the car because the person's arm is through it. And it takes a long time and lots of specifics, like specialized kit to get rid of that kind of stuff out. And so that's what it's an age-old tactic. And it means that you can sleep in there as well because it's a car and it's all waterproof, and you can paint them pink. But yeah, so going back to the whole tree sit thing, like it's very like one of the tactics, well, the reasons why you might use this tactic is to stall time. So every minute that those big machines or the trucks trying to get into a mill, or, you know, a machine inside a mill can't roll, or like this image, for example, in the middle of Forestry Tasmania's head office in Hobart, just people actively just stopping like the work that's happening right there in the office. Those people are glued, their hands are glued, super glued to the glass. So even if they were moved on, they wouldn't be able to leave. And throughout the whole time that they can't move, those people are sending that message. So there'd be like loud hailers sending messages to all the workers in there saying that, no, this isn't enough, because you guys in there are all part of this problem. And silence is complicit. You can't just carry on working there thinking that, oh no, it wasn't me that was dropping the forests. It's like you are complicit. So it's one of the actions that we do, because for us here, Sustainable Timbers Tas, which is vastly unsustainable, they're the reason why Tasmania is part of this climate crisis. So yeah, just stalling time. So the longer you can stay there, the harder it is to get people out, and therefore the more time you're going to be stopping work essentially. So barrels like this photo here, the barrels are just filled with concrete and chunks of junk, and because they're so heavy, it's difficult to move them. So those people are stopping a gate to a mill that has been milling old growth forests to sell all our beautiful, incredible assets, these like big forests, off to the rest of the world. In a time when we can't be cutting down any more trees. Like it's not any more native timber has to stop. No more native forest logging. So these people are sitting there. It's a non-violent direct action. They're not screaming at people. They're not harassing anyone. They're not doing any damage to machinery. They're not violent. They're completely not aggressive, but they are sitting there in resistance, making a stand for what they believe in. And as you can see, there's someone with the neck locked to the gate also, so they can't open the gate even if they wanted to move those barrels or drive through. And it takes a whole team. So the entire team, as I was saying, there'd be, during this action, that we would also always have a liaison. So someone that's the front of house that's like, okay, we're here. You guys need to just hold on a second. And this is what's going on, and calm the situation down. It only usually takes a handful of minutes, even when someone's very irate, for a good liaison who is well versed in the de-escalation of violence to just calm the whole situation. And so other roles will be, these people have buddies. They're there just to, those people don't have arms available to them. So they'll be giving them water and making sure they're dry and warm and have everything that they need, and just being there with them because they're in a very vulnerable position. So all these three people at the gate, for example, are all in a very vulnerable position. And it's quite often with NVDA, you are putting yourself on the line, on the front line, and is vulnerable. There's a huge vulnerability about it, which is deeply powerful as well. So yeah, other roles would be the media team. So you can do actions, but if we can't get imagery or get our message out, then it's not quite as powerful. So there's kind of different parts to an action. Some of it might be media, but in a non-violent direct action, media is not the primary goal. The primary goal is to stop what you believe is wrong, and then secondary to that, getting the attention that you need to get your message out and across as powerfully as you can. So alerting the media and getting, like we do with the Bob Brown Foundation, so like using all the platforms we can, getting all the conversation going through as many through as many platforms as we can to get whatever the campaign is onto the agenda. So to stop native forest logging, we're trying to put forests on the agenda to make it a thing that people have to talk about because it's too hot to handle. We don't, you're trying to stop this mill from working, for example, in this image. If the buyers then, we'll have a markets campaign where the buyers are going to find out that who are the buyers, like people are going to find out what timber is. It's like, oh, there's a mill there. And so what does that mean? So where is our timber going, and why aren't we getting any of it? And what are the other, it creates a platform to put this message out to all these different people who've got no idea, and try and bust some of the myths of Tasmania that are perpetuated around the place. I'll move on. So we've got a tree sit there, just in that last slide. That tree sit was at the on Pyman Road. So we had people continuously in a blockade camp there for people to come and visit, but also we had the tree sits up these huge ukes where they'd started clearing a forest, and we came in, set up these sits, and those lines, the line you can see in the top left there, that's directly connected to the sit, and then the line goes all the way down to a chip pile that they were going to try and move, and they had it machines all in through the sit, so we rigged it all up so that if they moved those lines, that sit would move. If they cut the lines, the sit would fall. And so it's a very vulnerable position again. The person's probably 40, 50 meters up, overlooking the entire coop. So what the police would do then is they would come in, the contractors come in, we'd have the liaison to greet them and be like, yeah, look, so your machines are all tied up, you can't touch any of it. That means they have to spend hours getting a specialist crew in of police and search and rescue climbers, and getting them to climb the trees and make it all safe. Or what they did in this case was, because they knew we weren't going to go away, and because they knew it was really difficult to get up into these trees really high, they actually just reset the lines and pulled their machines out. So that day was deeply empowering because we managed to keep our tree sitters in there, and from a position of black wallaby, we managed to see the machines then get paraded out of this coop, and they were gone. So walking behind a 30-ton excavator as it's with its tail between its legs, get walked out by someone is hugely empowering. And so we won that section. It's not protected, and as we know, every loss that we have is permanent, and our wins are only ever temporary. So we'll keep pushing, and they'll push back, and we'll keep pushing, but little by little, direct action will prove that they didn't have to bring the army in because we weren't trying to do any harm to people or things. So we'll always have the upper hand in that respect. And this area right here that we're looking at is where I was today. Further down this road, not only were they trying to now log that coop area with these huge trees, but now further down the road, they're trying to clear fell the rainforest. So we've got a fight on our hands. We're not going anywhere. Yeah, action roles. So we talk about arrestability of roles. So during an action, you can never tell, well, you can never be certain, but there is a basic idea that you know what the likelihood and risk is of being arrested. So police don't just rock up to an action and arrest everyone. That's not what they want to do. It's too much of a nightmare. They can't. It's illegal. This kind of stuff. So you might be doing an action, for example, like go and lock onto a gate because they're pulling I don't know, they're pulling iron ore out of the ground, and you're like, no, we need to stop this iron ore project because it's in the wrong place at the wrong time. So you'd have red rolls, orange and green rolls. So a red roll would be the person or the people who they know that they are not going to move on, and it's predetermined. So they'll, as part of the action planning, there'll be some ideas thrown around, and then there'll be a target, and the tactic will be this action that we're going to do on direct action as a direct action. And there'll be red rolls where someone knows that they're going into this action knowing that they're going to be arrested. So they might be the person that is going to lock on to a machine or a gate, or climb into a tree sit and be tied off to a machine, for example, or sit in the middle of the road cross-legged and refuse to leave. So that's a red roll. Orange rolls is kind of a gray area where, okay, so if you might be on a lease where you might get trespassed, knowing that if you get seen there, then you're potentially going to be summons, for example. So it's kind of like you probably might be all right without being arrested, but you might receive a summons, or they might just arrest you because of some other reason. But it's not your primary objective is not to go there to be the person who is arrested. So yeah, green roles are people who are support roles that are equally as important to every part of each affinity group, but they might be people who can't get arrested or who have bail conditions or who don't want to be arrested and they don't want to put themselves into that position. So there will be people who might be back at the safe house making sure there's hot drinks and food for the people that return, or they might be a runner, or they'll be standing on the part of the road that definitely is a public part of the road, for example. They're just green roles, people who don't want or can't be arrested, like definitely. And that's totally fine. Every action will have different roles. Sometimes an action will only have red roles because everyone going onto a certain place will be putting themselves in a position where they know that if they get seen there or if what they're doing there is illegal, then they're going to get arrested, and that's what they plan to do. So main action roles. Wombats. So wombats and possums are what we would call a red role. So they're the people that are putting themselves in the position where they're not going to move when the police rock up. And so the wombat is on the ground, so someone who's attached to like chained to a gate or cross-legged in front of the road in defiance. And a possum, someone that climbs into something. So they might climb up into a tree seat or a tripod, which makes it more difficult and takes more expertise to get them out of there, for example. And then those people will have buddies. So like I was mentioning before, buddies are people who will buddy up with a person who's a wombat or a possum and make sure they have everything that they need all the time. And that's often an orange role, probably a green role, depending on the situation, but it's not a red role because as soon as the police, for example, come and say, okay, I'm going to arrest you if you don't move, they'll negotiate a bit, but probably they'll just move on. Police liaison is an important role. So someone who's actually going to, so in that image there, the police liaison is wearing a vest that actually says police liaison on it. That's for the police to know that there's someone who they can go and talk to about the situation. It empowers the group to have one person that is the police liaison. So it gives us a lot more power because the police will manipulate things that you try and say, and they'll try and ask different people different questions or different people the same questions. And so if everyone else in the group knows that there is a police liaison and you just say, no, I don't know, you have to speak to the police liaison. The police quickly get the idea that there's a bit of a mechanism that they have to go through, and it gives us that card of being able to control the situation a bit more safely. A legal observer, so that's someone that observes, writes down, takes photos of everything that's happening, every interaction that happens with the police, with contractors, anything that people should know about it. And that's just a safety thing, so that if after the fact anyone comes back and says, oh, that person assaulted me, we've got backup to say, no, 0658, that person left, so they weren't even here, sort of thing. So it's a good idea. It's a safety thing, really. Work liaison, so a contractor liaison is someone who's just going to be well versed, like I was saying, in de-escalation of violence, and they will be there just to talk to the workers and make sure that, you know, no one needs to get irate because we're not going to be here forever and we're just making a point. Welfare and babushka. So a babushka is someone who looks after the whole family. So everyone that's on this action, they're going to be highly nervous, and it might be very early, and it's probably been a very late night in planning. And so someone just to keep everything together, make sure everyone personally is okay and that they have everything they need, feed people when they forget to eat. An action might begin very, very fast and then slow down and be very slow. So maybe hours and hours before anyone rocks up, or there's a lot of waiting often in action. So but babushka, someone that's going to just pour the hot tea and just make sure everyone's feeling safe. And then you have drivers. So drivers are important to have an exit strategy, ins and outs. Black wallaby, a role that we have for safety again. So black wallaby, someone that's not actually at the action, but they're not physically at the action, but they're in the bush or on watch somewhere else that can see what's going on. When everyone gets moved on by the police, they're still there, and they're usually the last person that leaves. So the black wallaby role means that they're there to not be seen. So they're the last person that leaves after the police have removed the wombat or the possum. They then leave, and they might be filming, just keeping an eye on what's happening, making sure that everything's okay. And also the possum or the possum or the wombat also know that they're there, which is, it reduces that vulnerability of a wombat or a possum. So attached to a gate with no buddy because they've been moved on, for example. Yeah, so they're there to make sure that things go smoothly. And then cop shop pickup. So the red roll, if all goes as is planned, orange and green rolls will go back to a safe place or a meeting point. And the person who was red will get a free lift out of there to the local cop shop, hang out there, get some black fingers for a little while, and then get kicked out. And so a pickup person will be there with hot chips and a coffee and a jumper and whatever else they might need, some ciggies if you're that way inclined. Yeah, it's a well-oiled machine that works, and we've never had any, there's been some hairy actions, but if all those people in all those roles are aware of their roles, then it's much safer. And also means it's more conducive to having a good experience for everyone in those roles. So the action works better. It's important to have a debrief after an action, see how everyone went, what can go better, what happened, some more intel. Some contractors might have said something that make you think, oh, well, maybe they are doing something over this place, or maybe they're pulling out, or other things. So it's always important to have a debrief. That's part of an action, is to have a debrief at the end of it. Yeah, media. So media, photography, videography, spokesperson, media liaison, media wranglers. This is all stuff that is there to highlight your message. So getting your message across is really important. You can do the action and stop the work. You might only stop the work for 2 hours, but then you're creating your own story, and the media will blow that up. And obviously it's not one of the main reasons, unless you're doing a direct communication. So you might do a big banner drop in the middle of town at an opportune time, while the minister's just flying in to talk about how he loves hunting seals or whatever it is. And you're there with a banner saying, "Don't kill the seals, idiot." Everyone sees that, the media picks up on it. Then there's this conversation about it, and someone might ask a question. Did you see to the minister, did you see this banner? What does that mean? Like, do you like hunting seals? And suddenly he goes red and he has to answer questions. So it's all, there's always a reason, a tactical reason to do things at different times. And so the media may be more or less important. It's just good to think about that kind of stuff. And shadowing and buddies. So it's really important to have people who maybe don't know yet what they're into, what kind of roles in an affinity group that they want to fill, but to learn, it's a really good idea to have a buddy, to buddy or shadow someone. So to learn some of those NVDA tactics, or to learn some of the techniques for de-escalation of violence when you've got some irate logger in your face, brandishing an angle grinder, trying to cut you off himself. Just being able to learn how it might work to calm those people down, or yeah. So not every role has to be running around with a chain around your neck. It's all a well-oiled machine that only works if the whole machine, all the parts of that machine are running smoothly. So I think that's important. Inaction. Yeah, we'll pass that. De-escalation. So I've talked a bit about de-escalation. I think that's something more that it's more effective to talk about when you have the opportunity to actually see some of the tactics being used for de-escalation. So come to an NVDA training, and we can totally we would go through some of those tactics to de-escalate a situation. So carry on a bit. What's this tactics? There you go. Yeah. So just a bit about some of the basic ideas of how to calm a situation down, how to be calm. Yeah, security culture. So we do. It can be pretty daunting. Security, like coming into a group of people that you don't know, when you're not familiar with them or the campaign or the situation in that place. Like I go to places around the world, and I always feel like I often feel like an outsider, but it's important to understand this idea of security culture. So it's this idea that more and more so it's becoming more difficult to just go and do things without having anything. We're having a comeuppance. So security culture is just basically a set of protocols that we put in place as a campaign or as a group, a grassroots group or an organization, that mean that you can put these protocols together, and the more these protocols get used, the more it becomes a culture for everyone. So there are simple principles of security culture that don't necessarily come naturally. So for example, we might not use people's names at an action, because some of us don't want people at that action on the other side to know who we are, or that we're there, but it doesn't have to be a daunting thing. It's about inclusivity with our group. It's about keeping ourselves protected and keeping everyone else protected. So there's a lot of stuff like yes, a vouching system. If I know someone, that's me vouching for them. If I don't know someone in a group who wants to be part of an action, I'd probably ask someone if they can vouch for that person, because if they can't and no one in the group knows who they are, then how do we know who they are? So they probably wouldn't be part of this action. It's important so that we don't get shot in the foot trying to do something and then finding out that actually, oh no, that person said they were this person, but they were a narc or someone who would come in just to infiltrate or to gather information or to try and stop us from doing, or they were a police officer undercover, or, and we talk about it in a kind of, it's a serious thing that we're talking about. We haven't necessarily had that happen here in Tasmania, but then again, we don't know. But it has happened in the past, and it is happening in the rest of the world. And so that's where these protocols become a culture. So we're used to the idea that this can happen. So that's not suddenly really difficult to suddenly get into this, like put all our protocols that we're deciding to put in place because we've heard that this thing's happening. We've already got this culture, so we already know things like, okay, well, that person's name during an action isn't what I usually call them. Cool. I don't have, another big one is not talking about actions. So if you don't need to know, then you don't. So if you don't need to, if you, so is it like is it a need to know basis? So if I don't need to know something, firstly, I don't ask, but also I'm not told. So depending on the action, it might be, and there's a huge, there's a whole lot of different scenarios. Some are very, very close. So only the people that are in the action need to know what the action is and what happens in that action. Others might be very open. It might be like, okay, we're going to do this action, but we need less security culture because we're actually going to like just go and do it with as many people as we can. So we make it very, very public. And those kind of steps need to be set out prior to the action so that everyone's on the same page. But if you don't need to know, you don't ask. And if you don't know, it's because you're not told. And it's not because people don't want to tell you or they don't trust you. It's because they're looking after you and themselves. If I'm not told something, a specific detail of a location of something that's happening, and I don't need to know it, at least if I'm asked about it, I can't get it wrong because I can't lie because I don't know. So there's all these, it's just a way of making sure that the only people that need to know are those that actually need to know. And it keeps everyone safe. I'll share a zine also with you guys that you can read up on security culture as a set of protocols that has principles. So it makes it more simple. Communicating with police is a good one. So nothing that you tell a police officer is going to help your cause. And everything that you say to them is going to help them. So the best idea with the police is to just say what you need to say, and that's it. And the only things we need to say to the police officer is your name and your address. And after that, no comment. Because that's the only legal things that you need to give them. And it's not because you're being nasty, it's just that you can't trust them. And they're not going to give you any information either. So if you just say those two things and then tell them that they can go and speak to the police liaison, then the police liaison is worded up on how they want to make the situation roll out, or they know what they want to tell them and what kind of information they might want to gather. There's no such thing as a little personal on the side chat with a police officer, because they're going to gain everything and we'll gain nothing, is usually the case. We also use security culture in electronic communication. So we use Signal a lot, which is encrypted. We use Jitsi, which is a platform like Zoom, but it's an encrypted, open source encrypted platform.
So we should have been
for meetings
this whole time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I've been doing this on Zoom the whole time, mate. Now you're saying it's corrupted.
I know it is. Well, yeah, it can be corrupted for sure. Like a lot. The other thing is, like, nothing that I say I wouldn't mind being on the front page of a newspaper. So that's important. Anything that I say to anyone over any kind of electronic communication, I can presume that the next day it'll be on the front page of a newspaper and I'll be unfazed. So that's important as well. So I won't talk about anything about any action that may or may not happen or may not have happened to anyone without just going for a bushwalk and talking about it there. But yeah, it's a good point. And it's one of those things that yeah, like that's a protocol. So it's like, okay, we're using Zoom. Well, should we be using Zoom? Okay, well, let's use Jitsi. And that depends on what kind of thing we're talking about, doesn't it? You know, if we're talking about, oh, let's go and have a citizen science day and invite the public, we can probably use Zoom for that. But if we're talking about doing an action and, you know, we just need to nut out a couple of details and it needs to be a face-to-face thing, but we can't all get face-to-face because of COVID, maybe use Jitsi or not at all. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then
it is amazing what's out there in regards to different softwares and stuff, and yeah, it's unreal. Like there is a whole nother world outside of Google Chrome and WhatsApp, and it's just, yeah, it's unreal how it's just not as I guess commonly used in many
yeah. And when you start thinking about the different ways of your communications being corrupted, then you start questioning what you should be using. So are you using Google Chrome or are you using Onion browser or another encrypted thing like Brave? So depending on what you're doing, again, you know, like there's certain communications tech, like Confide is an app that literally you can't screenshot. So if your phone won't let you screenshot messages, and you have to actively with your finger look through the message that someone sent, and as soon as you've read it, it just disappears. It gets completely wiped. And that's, you know, there's different, like in any kind of security culture, there's or any different action, there's different levels of security culture for each action. So if you're only doing comms through Confide, then you know you're literally only doing it through that, or not at all. And that's to keep everyone safe. And it's not so much about trust, but it's also about, you know, like I was saying, I'm not going to tell you something because if you know, then you compromise me inadvertently. Maybe you're not a good liar. If you don't know, you can't say, you can't tell. So that's the best way to look at this need to know basis concept. Yeah, that's true. Cool. Legals. You have to tell me how I'm going for time. I don't know. 25 out of 37. I haven't even really looked at this thing for a while. But yeah, and do, if you have any questions, put them out there for sure. Because so legals. I mentioned before, the only thing you need to say to a police officer is your name, so your full name and your address. So anything other than that, they'll ask you for sure, what's your mother's maiden name? It's like, well, you don't need to know that. What time did you get here? Well, you don't need to know that either. You know, there's no need to give anyone any information. In the same way that you wouldn't, you know, say certain things on your social media, the police just don't need to know. That's just not something they need to know. So you don't have to tell them. And yeah, they'll ask. People ask all sorts of questions. Move on orders. It goes on to move on orders. I'll skip that because I don't really know what that means. Potential charges, what we've seen in the past, things to avoid. Yeah. So there's a whole set of legals, and I'm not going to go into legals because that's a whole thing that's kind of just very situational. Depends on a campaign, depends on what you're doing, where you're doing it. So that's more about when you go to an action, or when you're going to go to an action, you know, or even to an event. We just held the big canopy camp out in the middle of a mine lease. So there was the potential, and everyone's on the same page. Everyone has to be absolutely aware of what they're up for. So the legals brief was, yep, you're on a mine lease. As soon as you come into here, there is the potential that if the police come and they see you, they'll ask you for your name, and then you may get a summons. And that summons will probably be for trespassing. And then the charges are blah, blah, and you'll go to, you know. So it's just important that everyone's is aware of what they're up for. We don't like surprises. We don't need surprises. Yeah. But yeah, if we do a, oh, here we go. Yeah. So disclaimer is, yeah, it's grey, and it's about where and when and what you're doing. So with regards to legals, it'd be good to just, I'll pass you through a legals zine on Tassie that we're building. And if people are interested, they can have a look through that, or we can talk about it more when people come to do some NVDA training or anything. I've been through what not to say to cops. Again, yeah, aggressive behavior. So the whole action, when we're talking about NVDA, so non-violent direct action, that's to everyone. It's not just to machinery. It's not just to the workers, it's the cops as well. It doesn't only look bad, but it's actually not going to help you being aggressive to anyone. And it also puts the rest of the affinity group at risk. So, you know, if you're aggressive to one cop and they take a disliking to you, they're going to put your whole group in that same, yeah, they'll put the whole group into that same light. And then the next time it doesn't look so good, and maybe they won't come prepared to be happy. Maybe they'll come prepared to just be aggressive and get rid of you, which is not what you want. There's no point. They've got a job, whatever. You don't have to like cops. I don't like cops, but I've had different experiences in different places, and right here, it is what it is. So that's not who I'm against. I'm against, in principle, the people that are actually doing the harm, or the things that are doing the harm. And there's never either the contractors either. The contractors also, they just want to feed the mouths of their families. It's not their fault. It's our problem. It's their problem as well. But there are bigger fish that need to cop it more than the contractors that are driving the machines, for example, or driving the boats to the fish pens, or, you know, there's someone that's winning a lot more and that are never getting hit hard. So those are the people that you want to make look bad and to target hard. So, because we do live in a place where Tassie's small and we're all one community, so it's got to be aware of how to change minds properly, not just be aggressive. Cool, let's move on. What's the other one? You got possible charges, summons, yeah, so possible charges, all this kind of stuff I think will go past because it's all very situational. Charges to police custody. I can talk a bit about how the scenario would work. So you'd go to an action, say, for example, you go at night and you set up a tree sit, and you might have someone attached to a machine in a chip mill. And in the morning they rock up and the contractor comes out and hasn't had his coffee yet. And he lost his game pool last night, so he's already pissed off. And it's dark and he doesn't really know what's going on and he wasn't expecting it. So he's pretty outraged. And so he'll start shouting at someone. After a while, he'll calm down. He'll call who he has to call. So his manager. The manager might come a couple of hours later and be like, right, what the hell are you guys doing here? Whatever. It's like, yep, so got a tree sit, someone's attached the machine. We can't, we don't, you can't touch the machine, you can't touch the mill, no work today. Cops will come, they'll take carriage of the situation, and then they'll just also hopefully make sure that old mate irate doesn't start bashing people. It can work, sometimes it doesn't work. And then so the cops will probably go up to the people who are attached and be like, right, so you're going to move? Nah, okay, everyone else leave. And at that point, the only people that are going to be left on site are the person attached to the tree sit or in the tree sit and the person attached to the machine. Maybe the liaison. Sometimes you're allowed to have a liaison. Sometimes they, depending on who the cop is, they're like, nah, everyone else just leave. And then so it might be a few hours, and then police search and rescue might come. They'll have their cut team. So the team of people have to drive up from wherever it is, a couple of hours away, to cut the people out of the elbow, so the metal pipe through the machine, through the people's arms, and then they might have a climb team to go and get someone out of the tree sit and get them out of there. You get put in the paddy wagon, you get a trip to the local cop shop, and then they'll put you through their papers. They'll get your name and your details and your fingerprints and your photo, and they'll try and get a statement, and you can just refuse, whatever. Then you'll get asked to sign your bail conditions, and you don't have to sign it, but the likelihood is they'll give you a bail conditions of, you're not allowed onto this mill site until your court date. So they'll give you a court date. It's probably about 3 months later, and they'll say, if you don't go to the court date, then that's bad. And then you'll go to court. So on that day, you'll have a court support as well. So someone will go with you, and with the Bob Brown Foundation, will totally look after you in court. So the action doesn't stop until the person's actually been charged in court. So the day that until the day you come out of court, it's not like, oh, you did the action, great, and now we leave you alone. We've got lawyers that will represent you, and so you don't have to worry about that. And you will go to court, and they'll say, you'll have been worded up fully by our lawyers, and because it's non-violent direct action, there's nothing ever that we've been charged with that's outrageous. And if it is, they usually get dropped. Even when you've been doing something, they sometimes get dropped as well because they lose the paperwork, or they just, and so then you go to court. You get probably a good behavior bond. So a good behavior bond where it might be, okay, 18 months, don't do anything bad. Otherwise you come back to court, which is fine. You can still do something bad, come back. It's just, the magistrate will probably see you in a slightly different light, and you'll probably get a fine, and it will help you fundraise for the fine. It's not usually an outrageous amount, and it's part of standing up for what you believe in as well, because this is the way the system works. And for those hours that you stopped the work, or days, depending on how it's worked, or part of a big campaign, months, that communally you've stopped this from happening. You may have won, you may not have won, but everyone's in it together, and you'll always have support from other activists. And then, you'll come out of court with a fine and a good behavior bond. And for a while, 18 months, you might have to be a green roll or an orange roll or a red roll if you decide to. That's totally fine too. But it'll be very deeply empowering, and you'll be part of a community that also cares for what they believe in. So that's just part of the system, and it's something that people in our culture grow up to be quite apprehensive about, but is actually just a series of tick boxes that you go through. You know, you get arrested, paddy wagon, fingerprints, picked up, hot chips, caught, bail, and then you go and do it all over again. So people are all, there's a whole heap of questions with that kind of stuff where people often are like, oh, but I want to travel to, you know, Uzbekistan next week. Like, am I going to be able to go? It's like, these are all very small, minor offences. Trespass is nothing, and still very much a process, a slow, like a procedural thing where they can't just let you go often. There are people who are doctors and teachers and all sorts of professions that still get arrested and still lead their lives completely normally. So it's not something that's detrimental to your entire life suddenly when you've been arrested. So it's good and worth being aware of that it's not it's really not that bad. And in today's climate of like extinction crisis, I think getting a $200 fine is probably worthwhile if it means that it'll inspire and instigate more action for the same cause, and for other people to stand up and do the same. So, and it works. So just recently look at the MMG campaign, 4 months, 70 days, and they actually just rolled the machines out, 2 hard basket, and they've left and they haven't come back yet. So yeah, really puts the pressure on. So get empowered. I think it's coming to the end of this thing. What next? Yeah, have you got any, Hillary or Maj, have you got any questions or things that you think people might benefit from knowing?
Yeah, I guess what I found interesting was, because I guess we first went to Sumac on the back of the trail run in 2020, and even going to the way it was kind of talked about, even going to the camp was seen as being potentially risky, you know, when we got there, we understood it a lot better, and we're like, you know, it's actually going there isn't, you know, you're not at risk of being you know, arrested. Whereas I feel like it's kind of, because it is such a foreign concept, it's kind of dramatized, and, you know, you feel like
for sure,
like being there, that, you know, and then you get to know, understand, you know, you speak to you know, you guys there and Ken and the team, and you're like, oh, hang on, this is completely normal in a way. And then, yeah, by being a part of your actions as well, like everything is so organized. Like, it's not like you just accidentally, you know, wake up one morning and decide you want to get arrested. Like, you know, it's, and I think
certainly,
that was very reassuring, because it's like everything's very practical and pragmatic. And, you know, it's like with anything, you kind of, like you said, you start being a buddy, and then you know, might follow someone, and then you think, okay, I've seen someone get arrested, I'm willing to do that. Because it is pretty confronting, I guess, when you said, yeah, you are face to face with a police officer who might be, you know, invading your personal space, and you know, it's from go to work. If you went from nothing to that, it would be pretty full on.
Yeah, for sure. And incremental steps is certainly the way to go. Like, some people don't mind it, you know, it depends on who you are as well, and often you are aware of that, and sometimes you're not. And it's good to try and, you know, be aware of how big those steps are that you do want to take, from signing a petition and realizing it's not working, to going and attaching yourself to a helicopter that's going to aerially spray something stupid over your land. Like, there have to be steps involved in the middle. And yeah, like being a buddy to someone and then going to another action is a bit more like, oh, okay, yeah, so this is a bit more intense for me. And just incrementally, because the the important thing there as well is you don't want to get turned away. Well, no, you don't want to turn yourself away and be not feel comfortable, and so that you don't come back, because we need everyone. Like it's the tipping point, and we can't put, no one can be put in the position where they feel so overwhelmed that they just don't want to come back and do any of it. So it's very much like you do what you're comfortable with doing, and by doing something, it's better than doing nothing. So,
yeah, and I think the way, like everyone that I've been to, you know, Sumac and then Pine River last year, or this year, it was like everyone just wants to go back, and it's great that that's the current culture, is that it just makes you want more rather than, you know, the opposite. And if anything, it makes you think, you know, next time I go to, I didn't, you know, often a lot of people travel from interstate and you've only got a set number of days there, but you say, next time I'm going to, you know, go for a bit longer and be around to be available if there is an action and actually take part in that. So it almost becomes like a, you know, part of your holidays, you know, factoring that into it. And like you said, you know, especially over COVID, you know, Tassie's, you've only got a limited number of people as well. So the more you can get people from interstate, you know, taking part when they are around.
totally.
Yeah, more the merrier.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, you end up just, I don't know whether the last holiday I took was that didn't involve going and seeing other activists anywhere in the world and being involved in their campaigns and in solidarity or helping out how I can. So
yeah,
definitely something that you realize that suddenly there's this whole other community all over the world. And the whole vouching thing, I can get vouched in New Zealand or Poland or Germany by people that know me, and suddenly you're like, oh, the floodgates open, and you've got this other community you didn't even know existed, that don't even know you, but they trust you. So it's a big world.
No, I think the way, I guess, the community, and it's, I guess, probably over, you know, a lot of this, I'm guessing, is from international kind of, like the kind of setup and the protocols as, you know, being evolving for a long time. And, but it's got to a point where it's incredibly, you know, I guess, not foolproof, but, you know, it's worked so far. And it is a really nice way to actually work with people that you don't know, but have that implicit trust and also that comfort and reassurance that you are going to be looked after and you're not going to get yourself in a situation that you're not comfortable with, and all that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, realistically, most of the situations in non-violent direct action are going to be uncomfortable to a certain extent, because it's not like you're going to work 9 to 5 doing this. You're going to be doing something that you probably begin not having any idea about any of this stuff, and you just grow from there. And like I said, we just need everyone to be doing something, and breaking that silence of complicity is really important right now, and getting involved.
Yeah, and I think it's always good, especially from the Bob Brown Foundation, seeing such a range of people being involved, from, you know, young to old, to all sorts of different occupations and backgrounds. And yeah, and I think it shows that we are at that point where it's, you know, not just that, you know, standard greenie, whatever, you know, like everyone cares about this, and, you know, it kind of normalizes it, because it says, you know, you can be a doctor, or you can be a teacher, or you can be a farmer or whatever, and still, you know, be someone who, you know, chooses to get arrested or, you know, attend these actions as well, which I think is, yeah, certainly I feel like changed a lot since I've kind of, you know, I guess since the 60s or whatever, you know, it's become a lot more, I don't know, part of, you know, and I think it's just at the moment, like you said, it's now or never in a way, and more people are willing to put their hands up and get involved.
Totally. We don't have much left and we don't have much time. So if you're going to do something, do it now.
So what's, I guess at the moment, the MMG campaign's still going on. Is that kind of where the main focus is at the moment? Are there other, I guess, you know, summer's coming up, which is when, you know, a lot of the logging and stuff takes place. they're yeah, what's the kind of main
Yeah,
focus of
so
the campaign at the moment?
well, the takayna campaign is always on. So MMG and other companies now are going into different parts of the Tarka, or they're exploring different parts of the Tarkine for different minerals. So we're building campaign capacity to go and hit them. The MMG site that was visited by those 70 people, the machines have pulled out now, but then there are still things going on in there. So there's surveying and people putting tags out and going in and out, doing various things, preparing for their next push. So it's definitely not dead yet. Then in other parts of the state, other than the Tarkine campaign, we've got a native forests campaign that's, they do log throughout winter, but they log in different areas as well, and more so during the summer. So that's going to be ramping up now. We've also got a swift parrot campaign. So the swift parrots that are coming from the mainland are coming down pretty much now. So we've just started seeing a whole heap of swift parrots, so the endangered swift parrot, come down into our forests to breed. And so the next 3 months is a really important months for them to be able to have habitat and to be able to feed. And they only feed in a certain area at a certain time. So we'll be mounting swift parrot citizen science days starting this weekend for people who want to come and be part of a citizen science project that will then allow us to, like we did in the Eastern Tiers last year, get them out of the logging in those areas, protect those areas for the endangered swift parrot, and then shame the industry and Sustainable Timber Stabs Forestry Tasmania into getting out of those forests. So that'll be the evil trifecta of direct action with science, with legal lawfare. And totally. Apart from that, the other campaigns that are running at the moment, we've just begun the Antarctic campaign. So we've got an Antarctic campaigner that's currently pressing for the cessation of toothfish fishing in the Southern Ocean, and to stop them from, we're stopping them trying to put an airport in Antarctica. So the Australian Antarctic Division is proposing an airport in Antarctica, which is an absolute ridiculous amount of concrete in a place that should be left for science. And so we're just being so close to Antarctica. It's Australia's role as well to protect that place, because soon there will be other countries trying to mine in there and do all sorts of stupid stuff in there. And then fish farms as well. So we got a mounting fish farm campaign, because that's a big thing in Tasmania at the moment, and more so now coming into the limelight is this idea of continued expansion of our pristine waters all around Tassie to create fish farms that are just wholly destructive to all sorts of environments. So
it's never ending, but it's
all
good
going.
to see.
Absolutely.
I guess the Bob Brown Foundation expanding, into the, the seas and but I guess, and it's good. Good to mention, I guess, the BioBlitz and the other kind of, things that people can do down in Tassie. And one thing that I think is amazing about visiting the camp is just hearing from the people who know that area and learning about the forests from, you guys who know all the, you actually appreciate it a lot more, because you can, know what you're looking at, as opposed to just seeing a whole bunch of trees and,
totally. So BioBlitz is going to be incredible. There's a whole heap of scientists and experts in their fields that are going to be taking people all around the Southern Tarkine in November. And that's something that we hold every year. And it's a big meetup of people in one place, and just meet everyone and then go off into the wilderness and be explained what's going on in all the facets of the ecology of those areas, to come back with science, with data, and be able to actually like put it onto maps and create some solid data to go and protect those places. And you learn so much from bryophytes and fungi all the way to bugs and freshwater invertebrates and fish, and it's incredible. So yeah, if anyone's around and they want to come to Tassie for November, come along.
Everyone's hoping that the borders will be open soon enough.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm sure there'll be an influx down there, and especially over summer. And then I think trying to think when takayna is. I think it's February or March.
The
run.
Sorry.
Yeah.
2026 this year.
But yeah, because I think that it'll be good to that's always a good, a lot of people that go back for second, third time, but also a lot of new people who will get to experience what we have. And hopefully it was great last year because we did a action at MMG the day out, or the Monday after, so it was great to actually be able to use be helpful while we were there. And it was pretty I guess tame, but it's still good to like you said, it's kind of that incremental
and any presence at all, like anything that we can do, even if it's like one person just standing there on the side of the road with a banner, if you can piss them off, that's great.
Yeah, I like it. What do they call it? Like making good trouble. That's what it's all about.
Ruffling the feathers.
Excellent. Well, I think we've taken up enough of your time this afternoon, Erik, / this evening. If you're ready to go.
Thanks.
No worries.
Enjoy a bed that's not.
Thanks so much.
40 meters above the ground in the wind.
Yeah, good one.
We'll be in touch when we're down Tassie way, mate. Again.
Yeah, let me know when you're going to be coming down, and come some days before you run and after you run.
It said that Tassie are opening their borders from the 15th of December to Victoria.
Cool.
So I think unless that gets pulled forward, which I don't know what the requirements are on that, then looks like 15th of December is what's the flag that's in the ground at the moment.
Cool. So that's going to be an intense week of actions then, I reckon.
Yeah. Is there any defenders camp happening over the summer?
Yeah, there will be. So we'll be organising that shortly, and you will definitely know about that when it happens. Excellent. No, look forward to plenty more good food and good company. Yeah, good one. Excellent. Thanks so much, Erik.
Thanks for your time, man.
I'll see you all soon, hopefully. Hopefully. Look after yourself. Have a good one.
Cheers, Echo.
Bye. Bye.